Do we exist as ourselves like in dreams in other dimensions? Can a person travel through the space-time continuum to help and guide their own past self? Is warping the space-time continuum? In this movie, Helen gets a phone call from her future self, telling her to get out, and that she must escape some evil men who are out to destroy her if they both hope to survive. The film begins as Helen awakens to her alarm. It has been just weeks since her husband Wells died and the reason was uncertain. Dottie was an engineer and co-founder at Curvature Research Incorporated, specializing in the physics of time manipulation. Next, she is at a diner with her husband's partner Thomas, who is concerned about her mental health. He is asking for her blessing to continue the science research he and her dead husband were researching. The experiments involved manipulating time. She agrees. At work, she has a hard time focusing, but her colleague Alex is there to lend support and help her adjust. Her old physics professor Florence and they share a drink, reminiscing about her college days. They play around with a robots project Helen made at grad school, where she met her husband Wells. Florence comforts her, then gives her the key to the lab so she can visit and work on more projects for fun. In her grief, Helen remembers a time when she and her husband shared a kiss in the car. She stares at the bedroom door, afraid to enter and face the fact that her husband will never return. After awakening from a crazy dream, she notices things around the house look unattended, as though she had been gone for days. The phone rings, and it is her own voice telling her to escape immediately, and a black car soon drives up, and she must hide from the man approaching her home. Shocked to hear her own voice, she takes this advice and does everything the voice tells her to do. She is told to trust no one but herself. She evades the man Crevice who broke into her house and manages to get away barefoot and injured. She manages to make it to her friend Alex's apartment. He tells her no one has seen her for a week. Helen is confused and tells him she does not remember where she went or what happened over the last week. She only knows her car is gone, and she thinks she went up to her cabin. Helen asks Alex to take her there so she can figure things out. Soon after they arrive, they see a car pull up. It is her car, but it quickly leaves. She borrows Alex's cell phone, calls her number, and she answers her voice. Alex talks to her, but he still thinks it is a trick, but she tells Alex it is another Helen, one who has time traveled. In disbelief, he tells us she needs to go to the hospital. Helen wonders what Wells and Tom were really working on. Yet he mentioned live trials of sending people back. Could he have meant in time? Imagine the possibilities. Gambling alone would make it worth the effort, not to mention crime prevention. At the lab, we see Tom and Kravis currently interviewing a time traveler. The traveler says that he has no memory of the event or anything else going back about a week, just like Helen. Speaking of Helen, Kravis says they have to find her. He suspects she is hiding a secret since she ran away from him earlier. We see Helen and Alex at the cabin, discussing how she found Wells' body there, but could not understand why he made such a horrible decision. Alex confides to Helen that he felt so guilty after his wife died unexpectedly of a brain aneurysm. He comforts her, saying she has no reason to feel guilty, and she needs to just deal with her grief, instead of imagining conspiracy theories of time travel later. While cleaning the cabin, Helen finds a trunk by the bed that wasn't there before. Using a combination only she or Wells would know, she opens it and finds an assault rifle inside. She believes her future self put it there for her protection. After a sleepwalking nightmare, Helen finds her husband's broken watch on the floor. She continues walking above the cabin, looking at all the machinery and things her husband made. Helen sees the math game equation they played the last time they were together there, but now it has been solved. This game used physics equations representing properties of an object. The solved equation indicated a hidden camera. Helen and Alex search for it, eventually finding it in Adir's eye. However, it needs a password to be accessed. Meanwhile, Crevice is trying to locate Helen. Using a tracking device on her car, he succeeds in locating her at a hardware store. He chases her, but she eludes him and escapes over a fence. Kravis obtains pictures from the store surveillance camera, where Helen is seen over the last 3 days buying materials for explosive making. Unbeknownst to Helen, Alex thinks she is having a mental breakdown and has already called Thomas to come up to the cabin. When they arrive, Helen grabs the gun and prepares to defend herself while banging on the door. Thomas and Kravis question her about what she was buying at the hardware store and give her 10 seconds before they bust down the door. Helen convinces Alex to help her escape. When Thomas busts down the door, Helen is behind them with the gun. She shoots a shot and gets Kravis to hand over his weapon. Helen tells Thomas she doesn't trust him, and they escape along the way. She shoots out their car tire to impede their pursuit. While driving, Alex gets a text message from Helen saying that she cannot let him live. After viewing the camera footage, Crevice plays a GPS device in his gun, so he continues to know where Helen is at all times and follows her. He catches up quickly, but Helen speeds up trying to lose him, only to crash and flip the car. Unhurt, Alex and Helen still manage to escape and run through the town. As Crevice chases them, the two jump on the bus and Crevice loses them, but still has their signal on GPS. While on the bus, Helen has another time travel related vision and thinks she is closer to remembering the password for the camera. They check into a hotel and discuss how the afterlife is a combination of physics and chemistry, and death is really just moving to another plane. They figure out the password based on this esoteric conversation and can access the film. The footage bears witness to the last interaction Wells had at the cabin with Thomas. They are discussing the ethics of their project in time travel. Thomas wants to take bribes from the CIA to use time travel during war battles. Wells threatens to expose this to the media, or better yet, destroy the prototype of the machine. Thomas argues that the job of a scientist is to do the science, get the money, and don't worry about how the technology is used, a common belief of most villains while destroying the world. Anticipating that Wells would not agree to this, Thomas poisons his drink. When he leaves the room, the camera has recorded how Eddie was really murdered by his partner. This deeply affects Helen, who now understands the text left by her future self and her need to kill Thomas. But then she realizes that perhaps she was sent back in time to prevent the murder instead. Why commit the crime? Crevice finds him in a hotel, and he starts knocking Helen, then Alex to the floor. As Crevice and Alex wrestle for a while, Helen climbs out the window, misses the fire escape, and lands on a windshield. She limps to the university, where Florence is a bit angry that Helen came here earlier to work on something in the lab and behaved rudely. Florence comments that she locked the door. It would not let us see what she was building when they opened the lab door. There is nothing there. Helen confuses Florence by asking questions about herself in the third person, and Florence tells her she left only 15 minutes before Helen rushes out to find their future Helen and prevent her from murdering Thomas. Meanwhile, Alex tries to convince Crevice that the time machine works and there are two Helens. He tells him Thomas killed Wells and then shows him the film to prove it. They agreed to find both Helen and Thomas. Before something awful happens, Helen catches up to Thomas and see he is working with some government agents. They leave in a black vehicle and Helen pursues them on foot, but doesn't get far. Instead, she goes to a gas station, holds a man at gunpoint, and steals his car. She arrives at the Curvature Research Facility right before Thomas and his security enter. She holds a gun to him, but she says she is actually there to save him. Security escorts her to their headquarters, where Thomas requests they speak privately. Helen confronts him about what he did to Wells and says that she came back from the future to stop herself from killing him. He keeps telling her that she is just gone insane. He states that to use the prototype, she would have to sneak in here without anyone noticing and know how to operate the machines. But she did, and used Wells' ID card to access all corridors and machinery. Thomas does admit that Wells was going to destroy the time machine and that he had to go. Helen grabs the letter opener as a weapon, thinking maybe he does deserve to die after all at that moment, though the other Helen is there inside the time machine activating the explosive device. Thomas cannot use his ID card to escape because Helen deactivated it, but he punches in the passcode and goes to stop future Helen from detonating the device. Before the timer goes off, Helen uses the time machine for the last time to transport herself to another dimension of the past. Both Helens eye each other through the monitor. She disappears and the timer reaches 0. A huge explosion occurs, destroying the inside of Curvature Research Incorporated. In the aftermath, Helen survives, and Alex arrives to help her from the smoky debris of what was once the building. Miraculously, Thomas is still alive. They all just stare at each other. I guess no one will believe them, even though they have their murder recorded on camera. You can't fight the government when the CIA is backing the bad guys. Well, at least a time machine is destroyed, so now things will be a lot less confusing. Right, a few days later, she goes back to her routine. Things with Alex continue as they did before, yet now they both believe they exist simultaneously on other planes, other dimensions parallel to our own. She receives a package in the mail. In it is a letter from herself with a USB. She plugs it into her computer, and it shows her with Wells, and they joke together, have fun, and speak of how the time machine works. Her husband states that in all of space and time, the only place he wants to exist is right there with her. At this moment, I guess they live happily ever after, or before, or in the present.